Hi, good morning. This is Gayatri Jayaraman. Welcome back to Shamaha. Those of you who've been logging in on a daily basis, thank you so much for your comments, questions, suggestions, and feedback. Also, do leave more in the box, and it helps me sort of think of more ways in which I can connect with all of you. Also, those of you who are new and logging in for the first time, welcome. I do hope you'll like, share, subscribe, and generally pass on the word. This allows us to reach out to a lot more people who might benefit from this information. Today, I wanted to talk to you about leaving the past behind. I noticed that a lot of you this year have had to do things like, move out of jobs that you've been in for a really long time, which may also involve relocating, changing your circle of friends, acquaintances, colleagues. Some of you are resolving issues with parents, especially at this time at the end of the year, or with friends who you've not seen for a really long time. So there is a lot of this baggage that some of you are trying to cope with. And of course, everybody says, just let it go, release it, leave the past behind. But the question is how? It's easier said than done, and we see this every single day. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips that have worked for me, and I hope they will work for you also. So the first one, let's get right to it, is understand your relationship with the negative, because we sometimes think that because we've had a tiff or a fight or a conflict and moved away and not speaking to that person anymore, not in physical contact with that person anymore, our relationship has ended. However, it is necessary to also realize that a negative relationship is still an ongoing relationship. The only time your relationship is resolved is when you don't feel anything, when you're indifferent to somebody bringing up that memory or talking about the incident or even meeting or seeing the person anymore. Um, Same thing with the workplace, when a lot of, it just doesn't trigger those feelings anymore. So it's necessary to understand that a negative relationship is still a continuation of the relationship, just in a completely different fashion. So look at the person you're dealing with, the workplace you're dealing with, the issue you're dealing with, and see if that is something that comes up often in your mind. Does it create strong feelings to the extent that you sometimes have a physical reaction, or your mood is disturbed, or you just can't, maybe eat or continue doing what you want to do? Does it trigger other aspects like stress eating? Do you need to go take a walk, take a break when you talk or think about these people or things? These are all signs that that relationship is still negative. And if a negative articulation is continuing, then your relationship still exists. The second thing is, once you've understood that a negative relationship still exists, define the problem. Once you understand that you have not let this go, and you're still in a relationship with this person, place, or thing, you need to say, what is it that is the problem then? What is it that I'm not able to let go? And this is a process of elimination. It might help you to sit down and write it out. You can, a great exercise I like to give my clients is write down your feelings, name your feelings. So, maybe take a piece of paper, on the top write, when I think about XYZ, I feel, and just start listing out your feelings. I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel hurt, I feel betrayed, I feel sorrow, I feel grief, I feel ridiculous. If you don't know the correct word for what you're feeling, just make up a word. It just has to make sense to you. Once you're able to do that, you'll start defining where the problem is. It could be, for instance, that I really need an apology from this person. Or it could be, I just don't understand why XYZ did what they did. Um, there are a couple of ways to go forward from there, which brings you to the third point. Now that you've defined where the problem originates from, try and find a solution. Okay, how do you find a solution? One is the most obvious and the most simple. Go up to the person, give them a call, write them a letter, and say, something's really been bothering me. I need to know what happened. I need to know why it happened. I need to know your perspective on this. And this is something which we may be able to do sometimes. You might get an answer. If it's a long time, the person might also be thinking, why did we have this fight at all? Um, and you might reach the point where you can have a conversation in which that person is able to tell you exactly what went wrong and what they're feeling about it. The second option is, when the person is probably not there anymore. Maybe they've passed on, maybe they've relocated, moved into a new life, which you can't really reach out and disturb. Also, it might have been really ugly or even dangerous if it's an abusive relationship, and you don't want to go and scratch something and start it all off again. You just want your closure. So, a great exercise that helps is to sit down on a chair and have a chair in front of you that represents the person, and have the conversation with them. Now, some of you might be saying, "Oh, I've had that conversation many times in my head." No, sit down and say it out loud. Say it in an empty room. Please don't go to a cafe and do this, or people think you're completely, what kind of a therapist are you going to? But in your own home, put down another chair as though you're facing the person and talk to them. Okay, say you. Say, I want to know what you did. I want to understand why you did this. I want you to understand how it makes me feel. Then get up, go on to the other chair, and reply as them. Reply as them, not for them. Don't translate. Don't say he is saying or she is saying. Say, think from their point of view. Think as though you're sitting in their shoes, sitting in their chair, and say, speak as they would respond to you, and see what comes out of your mouth. This is an exercise that might help you resolve some of the things. It did work for me. It doesn't work always. When you sit in that chair and you speak as them, you might find that they're saying a lot of things that you somewhere instinctively knew but were too afraid to articulate to yourself. You might find that that becomes easier to sort of understand their point of view. And this comes to the next point, which is then create a comprehensive understanding. What is a comprehensive understanding? A lot of times we get mired in this sort of anger, grief, sorrow, or inability to release because we have understood our point of view and we're very stuck on our point of view. When you have understood the other point of view, you need to reconcile them. There is a gap between what they're saying and what you're saying. And you need to put both those points of view down and say, I see it this way and they see it that way. So, what is that gap? And when you sort of walk in that gap and see what is to the right of you, what is to the left of you, you'll be able to tell if that gap can be bridged or not. Oftentimes it cannot be bridged. Okay, so what is the outcome of this exercise? You have walked in the gap and you have understood that it's an unbridgeable gap. This is not going to happen. This is not going to be resolved. That itself, that awareness itself will allow you to come to a state of understanding and release. You can say, you know what, this is not a fight that's worth fighting. Which brings you to the last point. Then once you have collated these multiple points of view, you can come to a point of what you have to do with it. Now your options are: A, resolve it. Now that you've understood what the problem is, what they think, where the gap is, are there any actions you can take to resolve it? If it's a particularly old person who's not got a long time to go, maybe, we might think it's okay for me to swallow my pride and just say, sorry, it was my fault, and let it go. We may not want to do that also, which is perfectly fine. uh, in which case you can come to this to your second option, which is to say, you know what, this is not something I want to resolve. So what would you like to do then? Let it go. So there comes the point at which you've understood the pattern by which this relationship, this negative articulation flows, and you can decide that you're going to stop having that conversation. You're going to stop having that negative relationship with that person and say, I'm letting this go. I can't hold this grudge anymore. I can't be in this sort of push and pull relationship. and that becomes the springboard for your release. Your third option, which I find is very healing for oneself, is to forgive. Now, I've addressed forgiveness in previous videos, but it's essentially, a lot of people say, why should I forgive that person when they did what they did? What about justice, right? But essentially, when you forgive, you are releasing yourself from the entanglement of that pain and that suffering, or the associated issues of that problem. So you're sitting with that person and saying, look, this is unsolvable, an unbridgeable gap, this is a continuing negative articulation, but you know what, I'm out, and the only way for me to be out is I send you peace, I send you, may you get what you want, um, but I'm done. And a good way to do that is through your meditations. Send a lot of healing, a lot of goodwill. Just say, just be happy where you are. But I have nothing more to do with this. And that will automatically just release you from that process. Because when we sort of hold on to this idea of, I want to see that person suffer, I want justice, then we're continuing the negative articulation and you are not releasing yourself. So I wish you all a great week ahead. And I hope this allows you to release some of the things that you've been holding on to so that you can walk forward into 2021 much lighter and freer from all the baggage that's been weighing you down.